Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Basketball PH podcast. Enjoy the show.
Hey, yo, everyone. This is your Fantasy Papi Roy, and welcome to the Fantasy Basketball PH, your Filipino brand of fantasy basketball. So, again, since because of the typhoon that recently landed in our country, we weren't able to, push through with our weekend episode with DMAC. So, we will be doing that for tonight. So, another English episode for you guys, and this time, since we've kind of like discussed several not so much of like super fantasy related content in the past episode, we'll be creating or we'll be starting to do some templated fantasy content for you starting this week. So without further ado, mga papi, will be calling on DMAC. What's up, bro?
Puppy Roy, how are you? Hello, everyone. I hope you're all safe.
Yeah, we're wet here in the country. We've been
Yeah,
swimming in the
absolutely.
flood.
Yes, but I hope you're all safe and fit and firing, I guess, now back into fantasy basketball. But first and foremost, your health and safety.
For sure, for sure. So to all of our countrymen that had some hard times in the past few days. Hopefully you already have electricity on your area, or hopefully the flood subside. In our area, there's still some of here in Santa Rosa, Laguna, wherein they doesn't have electricity yet, water distribution yet. So hopefully everyone is fine. So since we just had some bad or unfortunate event, so let's try to turn it up, and then let's start being positive by us, or specifically DMAC here, discussing some week three analysis. So let me just share my screen because we kind of like really prepared. So this is something that we'll be doing, everyone, every week. So DMAC will be sharing us his thoughts about the upcoming week. So specifically for this one, it's going to be week three. So imagine that. So we've been talking for quite some time, and now we're already in week three. How's your leagues, bro?
Doing really solid in most of my leagues. Had a win in the Locked On Fantasy Bowl League this week. Pretty comfortable win. I think I've only had the worst result I had was a draw, which is actually in my hometown league, which was disappointing. Was leading blocks all the way, and then it came down to the last few games. I think Aaron Gordon, my opponent had Aaron Gordon, and I had Jabari Smith. Jabari couldn't get it over the line for me, but that's okay. We'll live to fight another day. But all the other leagues, I had wins in, including your league, Roy, which I'm pretty happy about.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. We'll be discussing that Mount Rushmore very soon. So let me just find a better view here. Hopefully, everyone can see the screen. So I'm currently sharing week three Excel file that Dima created. So I'll give the table to you, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably hard for some of you guys to see, but I just wanted to highlight a few things. And the highlights in green are those teams that play 4 games this week. And I guess there's a couple of things you need to keep in mind. Firstly, the league setting. So are you in a daily changes league, or are you in a weekly changes league? And so that does have vastly different ramifications, I guess. So if you are in a weekly changes league, it's really important that you pay attention to those teams that are playing only 2 games this week. And there are 3 of those teams, that being Dallas Mavericks, Denver Nuggets, and the Indiana Pacers. So if you're in a weekly changes league, you have to make some tough decisions between potential top 50 guys and maybe guys that are closer to the 100 mark for other teams, but potentially playing 4 games as well. So there's some decisions and tough decisions that you have to make. So clearly those teams, Dallas, Denver, Indiana, you play your best guys. So your Tyrese Halliburton's, your Jokic's, your Doncic's. So you play those guys, but then you need to make those tough decisions around more the top 50, top 80 type of guys. So your boy, Benedict Mathurin, that's a tough call for a weekly changes league. Do you play him with only 2 games this week, or do you look for another guy who's sitting on your bench but happens to play 4 games? So what this spreadsheet shows is obviously the guys that have, well, the teams that have 2 games and the teams that have 4 games this week. And there's actually 9 teams that have 4 games this week. So not as many as last week. I think there were 15 teams. So it's a lot more even this week. So keep that in mind when you're setting your weekly changes league. In terms of daily changes, I guess it's less of an issue. It would be nice to have your top guns playing 4 games this week, but you can still get by and still take the victory with only 2 games this week, particularly those high-end guys with Halliburton, Doncic, and Jokic as well.
It seems like out of all the teams with 4 games, I can see here that which teams do you like most? On a quick look, it seems like the Los Angeles Clippers and the Milwaukee Bucks have a very, very good matchup. Milwaukee Bucks playing Detroit twice, and then against Minnesota Timberwolves, then OKC Thunder, while the Clippers will be playing Houston twice, and then my San Antonio Spurs, and then the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've highlighted those in green, but I've also highlighted at the top some of the high volume days. So you can see on the Wednesday, there's 11 games, and on the Friday, there's 12 games. So just looking back and looking at those teams that are playing 4 games this coming week, looking at quality games as well. And some of your viewers probably heard about the use of the term quality games, that I guess that relates to the high volume games. And you may be picking up a guy that is borderline a 12-teamer, is playing 4 games this week, but on those high volume days, he may not be able to be on your starting roster because you've already filled that out with another 10 guys. So you just have to be mindful of those before you make those calls, particularly when you're comparing a 2-game team or a 3-game team compared to the 4-game teams as well. So they're just things that you have to keep in mind. But you're right, there's some, and we'll get to it shortly, but we'll look at some pickups and some drops as well. And the schedule is very important to consider as well moving forward into this week. Another thing to note, I guess, in the first couple of weeks, probably still now, you're probably sticking, you're holding with some of the guys that you know have high upside, may not be getting the minutes that you'd like to see, but it is still early. And rotations, not all rotations have been settled at this stage, but a lot of the teams are shaping up nicely. You sort of have a pretty clear indication of where the teams are going. But I know there's teams like Orlando in the backcourt situation, you still need to work out how that's going to shape up as well. So you're probably looking at streaming sometimes, but it also is nice to hold certain guys. And we will touch on that shortly.
There you go. So I just want to add something that I noticed here. Brooklyn Nets. So you can see here they will start this week with a back-to-back against Indiana and the Chicago Bulls. Those are quality games. Again, quality games are basically those days with 8 games or lesser. So you can see here on Monday and Tuesday, the days have 7 games and then 4 games. I think Brooklyn is one of the teams that, or the lone team that has back to back. And then something that I love about their schedule here, they have another back to back on the end of the week, Friday, Saturday, and then 3 of their games are actually quality games. So I think adding someone like this is something like kind of like deeper, I guess, maybe in shallower, maybe Royce O'Neal. You can find someone Royce O'Neal to be added. Deeper leagues, who do we add? Deeper leagues. I mean,
That's a tough one. In deeper leagues,
short.
yeah, look, deeper leagues, you're probably looking at someone like Patty Mills. I think Joe Harris, he probably will sit at least one of those back-to-backs because he's coming back from injury. Seth Curry, there's still a question mark and he's questionable about that. So I probably wouldn't pick Joe Harris or Seth Curry. I think Patty Mills is a good pickup in that situation. You mentioned Royce O'Neal. I think he's probably owned in most 12 teamers. I've got a couple of shares of him. He started off the season really well, and he's still getting really high minutes, high 30s. So I think he's fantastic for particularly on the Monday, Tuesday, back to back to start the week.
Yeah, so I'm thinking. Well, I've been watching a lot of live games, so I'm thinking. Well, this is for deep, deep leagues. Maybe Yuta Watanabe, who has been playing like a lot of role playing, a lot of small ball lineup. He isn't like that big because we someone that I actually draft in our 20 deep Sharp was actually at the NPCD. So I think they're doing some small ball. But again, though those players won't like super impact you. Patty Mills, I agree. At least he could like maybe in these games he gets his touch. He'll give you like three snipes, so it's going to help your team. Aside from this, yeah, I think it's also something to highlight is also those teams with Sudo back to back. So like for example, Golden State Warriors, they Golden State Warriors have Sudo back to back games here, like the Tuesday, Thursday, the Miami Orlando, both are quality games. So instead of finding back to back games that actually falls to heavy games, you can actually check out teams with two to back games. So at least you usually in every league, in standard leagues, we have what around 3 to 4 ads per week. So you can actually utilize by getting those back to back or two to back games. Okay,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
DMAC mentioned about us talking about ads, drops, and all. So let's do that. But while I'm shifting, let me, uh, let DMAC answer some of the questions from our followers. Good evening, Papi Norman, Fampo, Aldrich, Trinidad, DeJounte for Edwards plus Clarkson. What are your thoughts here?
For me, it really depends on the size of the league. For 12 teamers, for standard leagues, I'm taking the best player. In my opinion, the best player in that is DeJounte. Anthony Edwards has great potential, and he started off the season pretty slowly. But for me, DeJounte is the best player in that. So for a 12-team league, you take the best player. For a deeper league, you may consider going for more depth. But my assumption is it's probably a standard league, so DeJounte for me.
There you go. So for me, yeah, same thoughts depending on the situation. Though Edwards plus Clarkson is interesting just because of the possibility that Clarkson stays in Utah. So maybe that adds up like on the value of Clarkson. But I do agree with DMAC. DeJounte, is technically, if you're not too much with the points, he's actually giving us early round value, almost first round value, just because of those almost triple double with snipes with steals. So love those stats for Dejounte. But
Well, he's
obviously
ranked
that
15th. So DeJounte is ranked 15th in 9Cat at the moment. So
exactly.
that's really elite. So yeah, solid.
Yeah, and that's happening while Trey is trying to trying to ensure that everyone knows that he's the big man in Atlanta. Notice that
That's
in
right.
the previous games he started showing up very much.
Absolutely.
Aldrich that was asking who could I offer for Hayward. That question is hard, but later on let's answer that because Hayward is someone that we'll be talking about. Uh, we have here some more questions.
I saw a
PLD,
question
PL
about
Inter.
Wiseman as well from Norman. I saw a question about James Wiseman. Thoughts about
Yeah,
him?
thoughts about Wiseman.
I think he's a drop in standard leagues. I think it's a clear drop. I think he's a bust. I know he's a high round pick. He was picked before LaMelo. He's an absolute bust fantasy wise and even reality, unfortunately, for Golden State. So I wouldn't bother retaining him in a 12-team league. Potentially in a deeper league, you'd look at him, but I think there are just better options out there.
And also, I remember, just to share. I remember. I mean, I've been like sharing this in the past, wherein I had attended an episode wherein some basketball, like professional Filipino basketball players, were discussing about who they would want more in their kind of like future if they own the team. So I remember James Wiseman was paired with Evan Mobley, and for some reason during that episode, I am like one of the few that are telling everyone to actually choose Evan Mobley. But I don't know, maybe they weren't actually like really don't know Mobley yet. But yeah, that I was telling them that Mobley like by a mile over over
Hmm.
James
And you're
Wiseman.
spot on. Spot
Though
on.
they are Golden State Warriors fans, so yeah, maybe I'll give them a pass. Uh, let
Right.
me just
And I know I've had
quickly.
discussions with people on Twitter about Wiseman versus Lamelo and taking Wiseman because it was a better fit, and Lamelo being very guard heavy at Golden State already, not taking the best player but taking the best fit. I think they'll probably admit now that that was the wrong choice. They'll happily admit that.
Definitely, definitely. Let me just switch your screen here, and then let's start off with our next topic. So, as of the moment, my screen is stopping for every second. So bear with us. I I'm clicking stuff here, but I don't know if they are already sharing it. So I've clicked a layout showing our presentation.
Well, in the meantime, we can still talk to the slide while we work out the technical difficulties. So I can see that you've got a few holds and ideas for holds there. I know you've got one of my main guys as well. Um, but we'll go through it, Puppy. You're happy to do that?
Okay, so I'll talk about the players on top, and then I'll let you handle your guy, so one of your guy in the bottom. So I have on top Poku, Eason, and Barton. So Poku, should I hold Poku in shallower leagues and even in standard leagues? Depending on how you built your team, given that Poku really impacts your, yeah, well, his counting stats are decent, but he actually impacts the percentages. So despite the upside, despite a slow start, if he doesn't fit the bill. So I won't say you hold on him, but if it fits the bill, I guess I would hold on Poku. Just like give him at least another week, if ever he picks up a momentum, especially now that they're actually winning. So let's see if how that works for Poku. But generally, I would say in standard, I'll check other players. I won't stick on Poku. Um, Tari Eason, he's one of my second half guys. So despite being one of the preseason darling, I think we have to really move on from Tari Eason, because looking at how Houston Rockets rotation works, well, they went big and then they placed Sengun uh, to play off the bench, and then now they're actually playing Sengun finally. But I noticed that whenever they need some forwards behind Barry, they actually give more time to either KJ Martin or Jashawn Tate. So that's going to be a problem for Tari Eason. We all know that he's kind of like a per minute guy, but from the word itself, per minute, if he doesn't get minutes, so he shouldn't be our guy. So I guess we have to move forward from Tari Eason. Lastly, Will Barton. So personally, I thought he will be better than what he's actually showing right now, but I think Dallas and Washington is kind of like the same in terms of Dallas being Luca's team. All of the usage goes to Luca. So in terms of Washington, all of the usage goes to Bill or Porzingis. Maybe the third wheel would be Cal Kuzma. And well, there's one fourth wheel that is knocking that always, wants the ball, which is the what's his name? The representation from Japan, Rui Hachimura. So Rui Hachimura, I remember watching live. The commentators are actually laughing because whenever he touches the ball, he just shoots it. he doesn't intend to pass or whatnot. So basically, those guys are the usage guys. So that's possibly the reason why Will Barton, is having a hard time to really give us some value. I thought he could step up given that Delon Wright was injured. I remember back in his Denver days, he's someone who really loves to get the ball and try to create some plays. But unfortunately, it's not happening in the Washington Wizards. In deeper leagues, I would hold just because of he can actually give you like decent points, decent scoring, and sometimes steals as well. But in standard league, the upside isn't there. So in standard league or shallower leagues, I would rather have players that has some upside in the last slot of my bench over those kind of like vets that they have like depending on their floor, but it's going to be hard for me to really be enticed on what they offer. So your turn, bro.
Yeah, so I think you've got Jalen Duren of Detroit Pistons. I think he's so exciting. He's currently injured at the moment. I think he's got an ankle issue at the moment. So he will probably miss tomorrow's game, which is disappointing for him, but he's super exciting. It's a tough one. He's a luxury stash, I think. If you can hold, I would hold. I actually did drop him in a league, though. I didn't have the luxury of being able to hold him. And again, you've still got Marvin Bagley to come back into that lineup as well. And I think Marvin probably gets more minutes over Duran, which is disappointing, and it doesn't make sense for the trajectory of that side as well. You've also got Nerlens Noel. He hasn't played at all. I don't think he's been available to suit up. He hasn't played at all. So he'll probably get some minutes while Duran's on the sidelines. So it's a tough one. I personally, I would not hold Duran, but we know that he's got such great per game upside. So it's a tough one. If you have the ability to do so, do it. But if you're in a very competitive league, he may be a tough drop, unfortunately. Next one, my boy, Grant Williams. I think he's been quiet in the last couple. I know he was suspended for a game as well. But prior to that, he was quite quiet compared to his hot start to the season. He's still shooting remarkably, probably unsustainably. I believe in the 70s from the field, which is really crazy. So efficient. He's even getting you a block per game as well. So I still like him. He's still my smoky for a top 100 guy moving forward. So for me, he's a hold. A lot of people may disagree with that, but I can see him being a top 100 guy. And finally, Walker Kessler, another one with per game upside. It's something about these big guys that can block. We know that they're fantasy gems and they don't grow on trees, these big guys that block a lot of shots. And with statistical scarcity around blocks being ever present this season, I think Walker Kessler's value is increased. However, he's missed the last couple. It is a tough hold, but I again, similar to Duran, I would still try to hold if possible. What do you think, Papi? That's a tough one. It's a coin flip for me on Walker Kessler. But I don't think he's shown enough of an all-round game apart from his blocks. I don't think he's shown enough. So I would probably lean towards dropping.
Yeah, tough call for Walker Kessler. I am going the other side. I think before the injury, before he was out, I remember checking on the minutes wherein he actually played with Kelly Olynyk on the floor. So that's kind of like a positive trend. So let's see in the upcoming games because, like what you mentioned, he was out for I guess 2 games or 1 game. So let's kind of like observe that. A good thing about Walker Kessler compared to Detroit, I think Utah has like more opportunities for him just because of how their team is built. I'm not yet buying that Utah will try to contend despite trying to check the history we're in. When was the last time Dan Ainge actually tanked? But then again, when was the last time we have someone like Wembanyama? So I think all of this, the San Antonio Spurs, the OKC, and the Utah Jazz, playing straight up. This I love seeing them win. I love the competition, but I think those are smoke screen, personal take. So I am leaning more on Walker Kessler over Jalen Durant.
Right. With Walker Kessler as well, he's battling for centre minutes with Vanderbilt, and we know that Vanderbilt's um, most people think he's starting power forward. He's the centre. He can't shoot from
Center, yeah.
distance. Kelly Olynyk is really the power forward, and he's playing sensationally at the moment. Fantastic pickup if you're able to get him. Lots of people were able to get him off the wire to start the season, which is brilliant. So it is a tough path to minutes, but like you said, if things don't go right, if things don't go their way in terms of wins, and they decide to start tanking and strategically tanking, Mike Conley starts sitting more and more games. Potentially Jordan Clarkson does the same. You could see Walker Kessler playing a little bit more. So yeah, I could go either way. I'm still leaning towards a drop at the moment in competitive leagues, but again, it's like I said, really tough to find these types of guys off the waiver wire.
Yeah, especially if you have if in your league you have unlimited ads, it's really tough to hold this type of players because you might end up getting more value streaming that slot. So definitely have to check your situations. Okay, so now let's talk about ads. So we've actually kind of like mentioned. So me and Dima came up with our top two ads for the week. So unfortunately, since we kind of like me, I personally messed up my schedule, so we weren't able to do this in the past 2 weeks. But let's start doing it starting this week. So my top ads, it's a bias ad. I know there's a lot of players, great ads for this week, but I really chose my two guys, especially someone from my team, San Antonio Spurs, Jeremy Sohan, who actually let me down because he wasn't able to play earlier today. But I'm expecting, not super big things, but from Jeremy Sohan, but I think he'll be fun to own. If you have a slot, I would suggest for you to get Jeremy Sohan. I think the unfortunate event of Joshua Primo will actually kind of like help San Antonio Spurs refocus their attention to their possibly the highest upside among the youngsters in the roster right now. Jeremy Sohan is, I understand the comparison with Dennis Rodman, but unfortunately, compared to Dennis Rodman, he kind of like doesn't rebound a lot. But he gives you dimes, he gives you stocks, he gives you blocks. So I'm encouraged about that. Imagine like a cheap Draymond Green, I guess. We can actually like assume those kind of stats for Jeremy Sohan. And then next, I mean this I recently called Tari Eason one of the preseason darling. One of another preseason darling is J Dub here from the OKC Thunder. I was about to create a post about my guys that I would definitely prioritize stashing in IL plus and IL in ING slots. So I wasn't able to actually post that, but I'll try to do it maybe later this week. And initially, J Dub was part of that because I all of my leagues, every J Dub that I see, I actually slotted him in my IL plus or IL slot because I'm expecting big things from J Dub. He's the lone OKC Thunder that I trust in terms of the whole season projection. I just think just in case or no, not just in case when when OKC tanks hard as usual. I think J Dub is someone that gets minutes at least until your fantasy playoffs because maybe the last 2 weeks we should expect all of those two-way guys or any actually any OKC blue player to really be in the roster, right? So, but starting now, he can actually give us decent stats already, even when SGA is around. So imagine when SGA out, he'll definitely give us more. And then the moment Dort goes out, and maybe who else, everyone goes out. I think they would love to see how J Dub what J Dub will actually bring to the table. So yeah, these are my top two ads for the week. Now let us go to DMAX top two ads.
Yeah, I got Bismack Biombo. It was a line ball decision, him or Jock Landau. I love Landau, not just because he's an Aussie, but I think he's got more offensive punch than Biombo. But I think if you're looking for some blocks, and Biombo got 5 blocks in today's game, which is outstanding. They shared the minutes, Landau and Biombo. So there's no clear winner. But I like Biombo because it is, like I was alluding to before, it is quite tough to get blocks off the waiver wire. We're not really sure how long uh, Aiton's going to be out, at least 1 week. So I think
At
we've
least
seen it
one.
before with Biombo last season. And we even saw it when he was at the Charlotte Hornets as well, that he can put up some good numbers, particularly with rebounds and blocks and good field goal percentage. So I think he's a good ad for at least the next week, perhaps even more. My next ad is Josh Richardson. I know with Josh Primo being waived by the team, such a shame. He was a lottery pick, such a young player who had good potential as well. But you can't be showing your penis out in public. So Josh Richardson is a good pickup. I think we've seen even flashes of brilliance this season in a couple of games. He's not just hit threes, got points, but even with his assists. And similar to blocks, assists is quite difficult to find on the waiver wire as well. So I think if you add that, plus his offensive firepower, and when he was at Miami, he was a top 60 player. So we know that he's got it in him. He just hasn't been able to have the opportunity to do so. The Spurs are pretty thin in the backcourt at the moment. So I like Josh Richardson as an ad this week.
Let's hope Jay Rich, brings back those blocks from the guard position, because I remember back in Miami, like you mentioned, he's one of my kind of like young targets before I remember him. I actually got him in my one of my keeper leagues because of those out of position blocks. But since then, we haven't seen that. Right?
We haven't
Hopefully,
seen it, and I know there's
yeah.
hopefully it comes back. Probably won't just by if you're looking at training over the last few years, but we know that he can shoot the ball. He's a great scorer, and if he can add those assists as well, I think that's going to be really important. He does differ with those other shooting guards that a lot of people are picking up and dropping and sort of streaming through. So guys like KCP, even Kevin Herter for that matter. But he's slightly different in that he does provide and does have the potential to provide high-end assists as well. So look out for Jay Rich.
For sure, for sure. Because my San Antonio Spurs is trying to win the chip this this year.
That being Wemby, absolutely.
The Gentleman really kind of like dragged us. So now without the Jonte, we're actually blossoming. Okay, so we've talked about the ads. Let's now talk about the drop. So this one of my drop guy was actually mentioned earlier, James Wiseman. Um, well, at least for the Filipinos, maybe like more possibly around the world, for sure. Everyone loves the Golden State Warriors. Most
Mm-hmm.
most of us love the Golden State Warriors. Most of us love that they actually did a great job, contending while rebuilding. So they have a lot of solid youngsters. But the question now is, before we thought of James Wiseman and Jonathan Kuminga, that hey, these are great or amazing talents, but they are still raw. But now are they are I mean, last time against the Charlotte Hornets, Nick Richards actually budded James Wiseman. So being raw now isn't like isn't a valid reason anymore. So like what DMAC mentioned earlier, I think it's becoming or he's leading to the bust territory. I personally was kind of like not super high because I on that because that rookie season was the first time I created Fantasy Basketball PH. Then I was really expecting a lot from Lamelo and well, surprisingly Killian Hayes. I thought Killian Hayes is someone who could actually contribute. He showed us a glimpse of being good in fantasy, but he's far away. But that goes as well with James Wiseman. So he's he's someone that is being hyped by media because of those reels of or those tweets, right? So maybe that's the reason why people are high on him. But now, if you need some sign, this is the sign I'm giving you. Drop James Wiseman. It's not wise, man, to really own James nowadays. So another big man is JaVale McGee. So JaVale McGee has been in the kind of like the last picks of almost all fantasy basketball analysts. Even me, I actually drafted Jabel McGee in one of my league. Actually, it's in the fantasy locked on bowl. But I actually dropped him already. I actually added James Wise. No, so JaVale McGee, I thought he can be the per minute guy, but given that his case, he's getting old, he has asthma, and now Dwight Powell is the starter in the Dallas Mavericks. It's going to be hard to own JaVale McGee just because of his blocks. If that's the case, then I'd rather own Kessler or the Durens compared to McGee just because of their upside, right? So I guess as of the moment, he's just maybe a stream guy. You need some blocks or field goal percentage, but to own him is going to be really hard because he not only the stats but also the minutes. He doesn't have minutes in the Dallas Mavericks. Like I mentioned earlier, this is something that I will be uploading very soon. I've already finished the recording. My analysis per team. Two teams that specifically the Dallas Mavericks is just Lucas team. Everyone's a role player, so and in the pecking order, JaVale McGee is like what second or third like over or maybe behind Christian would rather. So it's hard to really own JaVale McGee. Couple of more drops, I guess, are kind of like those. Because I do understand that when you have players like, for example, Delon Wright, and then they got injured, it's hard to really, give them away. Because in the past games, Delon Wright is really getting a lot of steals. So one case is Delon Wright. If ever you still have him in the IL Plus, I think I would rather drop him or even other similar cases like Delon Wright that are actually injured just because of those instances wherein your team has someone with GTD status or out status. Like for example, earlier I have Jeremy Sohan with out status. So if ever you have that Delon Wright, then you won't be able to really adjust your team. So I'd rather clear those type of players and then add some that are kind of like has more when they come back has a possibility to like provide more value. Like for example, someone like Dennis Schroeder, I would rather have those injured players. So next up, Dima.
Yes, Derek White, we saw another dud performance from him today. Malcolm Brogdon, even though coming off the bench, he's getting the more of the minutes over Derek White, which is really disappointing. We know Derek White's a good player. He's a great defensive player. He can shoot the ball really well. He's just not getting the opportunity. The usage is obviously going to be dominated by the superstars on the Celtics. So he's not getting much of a look in compared to when he was at the Spurs, for instance. So he's a clear drop for me. The other is Brandon Clark, and that could be controversial because he came into the season with a lot of hype with JJJ injured. People assumed that he would start at power forward. Turns out it wasn't going to be. It was Santi Aldama. And I think that just makes sense from their team perspective and spacing and allowing Ja Morant to do his best work inside and penetrating. But Brandon Clark's not getting the minutes that you'd love for him to get, and we know that he can be a per minute beast, and he's got the high field goal percentage. He's got good defense, but it's not translating into fantasy goodness, which is really disappointing because a lot of people were drafting him around that 100 mark. So for me, he's probably a drop. Santi Aldama is getting into that stage, but I would rather Santi over Brandon Clark personally. What do you think, Puppy?
I actually drafted Brandon Clark in the Locked On Fantasy League, so I also dropped him. I actually already dropped a lot of players in that league. So, well, good thing about Brandon Clark is actually uh, getting better stats and getting more minutes, but still not enough to be like literally rostered in all of uh, formats. But something to monitor here is the only reason why Brandon Clark can't really be in the floor most of the time is because they are actually playing um Steven Adams, the
Stephen
Aquaman,
Adams.
like most of the time. So you aside from monitoring Triple J or Santi Aldama, you also need to monitor Steven Adams. So the moment Steven knock on the woods, something happens to Steven Adams. The first it's not going to be other centers. It's going to be Brandon Clark. Actually, they are actually playing Brandon Clark like almost similar to how they play Steven Adams, possibly because of the skill set as because Santi Aldama can actually open the space compared to Brandon Clark. He kind of like tried to get some decent perimeter um, arsenal in his game, but it's not. I think Memphis Grizzlies doesn't plan to lean on that more because Santi Aldama really shoots better. So yeah, so that's my take on Brandon Clark. For Derek White, he's a great stream. He's someone that is going to be added and dropped a lot of times in this season, just because of hey, the other day he gives you 2 blocks, 3 steals, 3 snipes, stuff like that, 4 assists, and then he gives you egg on the other day, so he gets dropped. So I'm seeing Derek White to be on that territory. So the moment that Robert Williams comes in, and then everyone in the Boston Celtic adjusts, maybe it's going to kind of like really limit uh, more on Derek White's upside to really provide value. So not looking good because I really love Derek White back in the San Antonio Spurs. Still, it's a
And
positional
just
battle. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I was just going to
sometimes
mention that with Derek White, it's fresh in my memory because I streamed him in twice this week and looking for some of those out of position stats like blocks and assists, and he burnt me twice. So I'm taking it personally. So yeah, it's a drop and it's almost a vengeful drop. But yeah, even without any emotion, I think we can honestly say he is a drop in standard leagues.
For sure, for sure. But people depending on their experiences, people kind of like has emotional attachments to this player. So if you're someone like me who loved him in back in the San Antonio Spurs, every time you see him in the free agent pool, there's always a light there, or a question there. Maybe this is the day that Derek White plays
Right. Yeah, it's a
better.
sexy name. It's a sexy name. And he had one of those games that was outstanding, but he's had about four duds and one good game.
For sure, for sure. Now, let's go to our top sells for the past week. Um so first off, I would like to kind of like explain how I see trading in terms of the selling point. You'll definitely see a lot of posts that hey, you can sell this high, sell Dennis Smith Jr. sell because that the moment Terry Rozier comes in, Dennis Smith will be out of the rotation. Blah blah blah. Uh, it's easy to say that, but in reality, it's really hard to sell those type of players. It's really hard to sell the players that are well known, like for example Russell Westbrook. Um, it's because of the perception, because of the information that is already available in the internet. It's hard for you to deal those players. So if ever,
Mm.
so I don't disagree with them, but if ever you try to sell those players that are kind of like well known, that we're expecting that won't eventually doesn't have any good projection per se, I would encourage you guys to do a 2:2 or 3:3, or like at least more than 1:1 trades, just to put in some kind of like we call it in the Philippines like a palamute, or a slider, or an illusion that that you aren't really trying to flip someone that you really don't like. So just want like to put that there before I kind of like discuss my two players. So Gordon Hayward, I think healthy Gordon Hayward is always a decent Gordon Hayward, always a kind of like that middle value SF that you can find. But compared to other top sales, I think Gordon Hayward's projection is also, decent. Even if Lamelo, or even if Terry Rozier comes in, will have the role, given that Miles Bridges is actually out of the picture. So he'll still provide some value. The only reason that I would sell Gordon Hayward is because of the risk that he gets those random injuries that out of this world, almost similar to how Kyle Lowry gets his injury. So sometimes it's in the nose, in the legs, or in the wrist. So it's hard to really give faith to Gordon Hayward. So with that said, I'll definitely try to sell Gordon Hayward. Given that there's no like injuries as of the moment, he's actually tearing apart on. He's actually providing good value in the Charlotte Hornets, and Terry Rozier doesn't have a defined time yet. That goes as well with Lamelo. So maybe there's like a cloud or a big question mark that hey, maybe it's okay to roll the dice to Gordon Hayward. So I guess in terms of you get of a if I would like categorize someone that I sell to the point that hey, can I easily sell these players? I think Gordon Hayward could be in a category that it's easier than other options. My next guy is Donovan Mitchell. We love shiny things, So if you don't think Donovan Mitchell is a shiny thing as of the moment, then you have to really clear your eyes because he's tearing it apart on the start of this season. He's actually playing better over how he performed in the Utah Jazz. So, with that said, I also don't think it's sustainable just because Darius Garland isn't playing yet. I also don't think it won't really drop so much, but I may be wrong. Those assists definitely will get dinged. The usage, of course, will get dinged, so that's why assist goes down. Maybe a little more on the scoring, but let's see, maybe they can actually coexist with one another, but I just don't think those 30 and 10 will be consistently will he consistently deliver that. So if you can get a first rounder from, like for example, who's a struggling first rounder, would you would you accept a trade of getting Carl Anthony Towns for Donovan Mitchell, Dima?
I would take Towns, yes. You're right. Garland, as soon as he returns, Donovan Mitchell won't be averaging 7.3 assists per game. Mitchell has looked amazing at point guard, but I think for the Cavs to be successful, they need Garland to run the point and Mitchell at the shooting guard. So, yes, Donovan's now 10th ranked player per game. So I would take Cat. Um, Cat's not going to be a first rounder, and I don't think Donovan will be, but I think Cat will end up being ranked higher at the end of the season. But it will be close, but I would take Cat.
There you go. So that's the idea. So that's the idea that I have for Donovan Mitchell. So so the window for you to trade Donovan will be as long as Darius Garland is out. So
Mhm.
so people are thinking of Caris LeVert. being, the player that will be gone when Darius Garland comes in? Definitely yes. That's 100% yes. So that's the reason why it's hard to really sell someone like Caris LeVert, right? So that's the reason why I thought of like, hey, why not Donovan Mitchell? Because Donovan Mitchell is a household name, but I think he's an easier bait. But again, don't trade just because of for the sake of trading, guys. We are just like really putting this on the table that hey, if you have a situation wherein you want to improve your team, then and you have these players, then you can actually play around of selling them out. But don't trade just because of for the sake of trading. If your team is doing well and then you own these players, then stay put. Let's just, we'll just give you some idea that you can entertain depending on your situation. So again, let's give the floor to Dimak here with his top sells.
Yeah, I know this is your boy, and you've tagged me on Twitter. Thanks, Roy. You're sticking it to me. Thank you very much. But SGA, uh, number one ranked fantasy player this season. He's been amazing, absolutely amazing for OKC. He's actually played more than I thought he would. Um, in one of the games, he was actually doubtful, and then he turned around and he was starting, which is amazing. Um, Number one, yeah, obviously unsustainable for me. I think you've said he's a potential first rounder in the future. He's a first rounder. He's the first placed getter at the moment, but I just don't think him um, averaging 31 points per game on ridiculous shooting close to 50% from the field is just amazing, and 100% from the line. It's just not sustainable. There's 0% chance of that happening. Plus, Giddy needs to return as well. Your other boy, Jalen Williams, he's come into the team as well. So they're going to have to share that ball around. The usage is going to come down. Um, but that's not to say he can't be a second round player. So just because he is ranked first at the moment, that is why he's a clear sell high for me. So if you can get a first rounder for him, you've got to do it. Um, because I do see down the track, as you've alluded to as well, that OKC will probably start tanking for Wemby. I think it's in their best interest to do so. So you're going to have more games where guys like Giddy and SGA do sit more and more. So make the most of it. He's hot right now. Um, so if you can sell for a first rounder or even an early second rounder, I would do that. My next guy, Brook Lopez. Can you believe it? He's the 14th ranked player, the old man, Brook Lopez. Again, that's on unsustainable blocks, 3.6 blocks per game. That's almost a career high, if not a career high, and he's doing that on really good shooting as well. He's hitting 2.6 3-pointers per game. He's looked really good. He's looked sharp. I know he came back late last season, but coming into that Bucks lineup, and you're big on Bucks taking out the championship this season. He's extremely important for what they're trying to achieve. We spoke about it last week that he's really important for what Giannis can do as well, and how the game style revolves around Giannis. A lot of that starts with what Brook can do on the defensive end, but he's looked good on both ends. But 14th, that's unsustainable. Uh, Again, a lot of people were picking him up off the waiver wire or their last pick in drafts this season. So if you can get him for a third rounder or a fourth rounder, I would have no hesitation in doing so. But again, like Roy said, if you can't make that trade, I wouldn't stress. Enjoy it, ride it out, because those blocks are amazing, and he's giving a tremendous value right now.
Speaking of Brolo is more valuable in Roto than head to head. So if you're in Roto League and you want to flip Brook Lopez, I guess he is more valuable in that format. Especially he's one of those centers that has good percentages specifically in free throws and gives you a lot of blocks. So if you want to flip Brolo in Roto, ask more. Buys. Let's go for some buys. DMAC. So from my end, I'm going first with Scotty Barnes. So Scotty Barnes in Toronto news wasn't really healthy. He's not yet 100% when the season started. So that's possibly one of the reason he started slow. I'm ex- it's it's hard for to be honest, it's hard for us to really assess what's the next gear for Scotty Barnes. One thing that actually surprised me last season is ability to score. So Toronto actually gave him that path that hey, you want to score, then go score. So I'm sticking that at least Scotty Barnes could at least replicate what he did last year. And if just if the Toronto Raptors really adjust the minutes for FVV and maybe give more time to that will definitely give more time for Scotty Barnes to take the playmaking chores. And then once he's 100%, I'm assuming that he'll be better than what he's actually providing us right now. So Scotty Barnes isn't a player that kind of like people are high compared to the likes of Anton Edwards or Cade Cunningham. So maybe it's easier to buy some Scotty Barnes stocks compared to those players. Another player for me would be Paul George. I was thinking of several names here. Like for example, I was thinking of Zach Lavine. I was thinking of who else was I thinking? Kawhi Leonard. But I thought of Paul George just because maybe just maybe the owner of Paul George kind of like thought that hey, I don't trust Kawhi. I think Paul George will definitely tear it up. And then now in the past 2 weeks, he is now super angry. Maybe it's a perfect time to really instigate that. Hey, I agree, bro. Paul George sucks, so trade him to me. So you can do that approach. Maybe you can actually check or try to convince the owner of Paul George that he that maybe those two superstars of Los Angeles Clippers are done. Maybe they won't play. But in reality, that won't happen. Maybe this is just probably a bad start for the Los Angeles Clippers. They are one of the teams that actually we expect to be better. So I'm expecting in a couple of weeks that they going to be better, not only in fantasy but also in reality. Any thoughts about Paul George, bro?
I agree. He's the 99th ranked player this season. That's probably a career low for him. Last game he had the flu. He was very sick, and that showed out in what he was trying to do. His shooting percentages from the field have been remarkably low for him, and he historically, apart from maybe one or two seasons here or there, he has been in the low 40s, but that hasn't predicated in what he can do on the fantasy perspective or from a fantasy perspective. So I think he's a huge buy low, and if you can throw out a fifth rounder or a fourth rounder for him to obtain his services, I would do that because I think he's in for a big year, particularly with so many concerns around Kawhi and his health and longevity with the team. I think Paul George is going to be running the show. So I think, yeah, do it, but do it now because I could see an explosion happening this coming week.
Would you trade Donovan Mitchell or SGA? So well, I think you'll definitely trade SGA for Paul George. How about Donovan Mitchell?
Mm, that's a tough one. That's a great question. Mm. I probably would. I know that Paul George's upside is huge, but on the other hand, you think about the missed games for the Clippers. It probably does help that they haven't gotten away to a hot start. They do need to catch up. And I think I mentioned it on an earlier episode that they probably don't mind where they end up in terms of their seedings. They've got enough depth, they've got enough talent to do damage from any seed in the playoffs. But I still think they need to get there in the first place. So I think the slow start may be actually a godsend for keeping Paul George on the court and potentially even getting Kawhi a bit more of a run down the track. It's a really tough one. I'd probably still go for Paul George. I still think he's got that upside. We've seen it before. He's been a first rounder in the past. I probably would make that call. But it's a tough one. What do you think?
Yeah, I would also probably pick Paul George. I like what the words that you mentioned. Compared to Donovan Mitchell, at least we all know that Paul George has that ability to really provide us first round value compared to Donovan, who really needs to get steals, to who really needs to get free throws, to really push his value and provide us that first round, a first rounder value. So yeah, I would take Paul George, but again, it was a tough call just because of the schedule of the Los Angeles Clippers and the possibility that the load management and all. So yeah, love those tough calls. Now your bias, bro. Bigs, you got the
Yeah, I've
two bigs
actually,
here.
yeah, two bigs. I actually have both of these guys in my hometown league. So they've been very disappointing for myself. But Bam has looked a lot better in the last two games. But I still think the buy low window is open. A lot of people were taking him around that pick 20 mark, definitely in the second round, if not the start of the third round. He's currently giving us, what is he ranked? A second in NICAP this season, which is extremely disappointing. But like I said, the last couple of games has been much improved. He's looked more assured on the offensive end. He's getting more defensive stats as well. So those steals are coming, and he actually had a few blocks a couple of games ago as well, which is a nice change because we know it's in him. He's still my pick for Defensive Player of the Year, so we know it's in him. It just we need to see more of that from a fantasy perspective. He's looking more assured now, but like I said, I think the buy low window, particularly if you're just looking at ranks, it's still open. So if you can throw out a fifth rounder for him, I would do that because I think he still has that second round upside even after this slow start. Jarrett Allen, again, really slow start this season, but you look at his numbers and they're not too dissimilar from last season, except he has reduced in terms of his points output, but also his blocks. He's just not bringing the hustle that we saw from him last season. We know that he had an injury late last season, but he was coming off of an all-star season. So we expected big things from him. He's still a double-double machine. So we do have high hopes for him. But I still think he's a buy low. Very, very slow start. But again, with Garland to come back in, it does change the chemistry of that team. So perhaps that also changes his output. So there's still a little bit to play out. But even today, I think he got less than 30 minutes. Mobley got well over 30. So it's just an interesting take. And Robin Lopez, as his backup, is getting too many minutes for my liking. But yeah, that's also impacting on Jarrett Allen. Yeah, so huge buy low for me.
Yeah, the two vets are actually getting is playing solid this year. You mentioned about Rolo, and then we have also Kevin Love. Those two veterans are kind of like, especially earlier with Kevin Love, he actually won a lot of teams earlier if they're in a close
Yeah.
matchup. I like that you mentioned Darius Garland. I think maybe Darius Garland, known as a better playmaker than Donovan Mitchell, gives
Mm.
more space for Jarrett Allen and even Mobley to really get some offensive thing going. And then with that said, that also means that maybe Jarrett Allen could have more energy to focus more on the defense. On the Bama de Bias end, for me, if you believe that Kyle Lowry won't be able to kind of like really finish this season with what 70 games or 60 games, then you need to also believe that Bama Adebayo's value will definitely go up. Because the moment that Kyle Lowry isn't available in the floor, Bam Adebayo gets some, kind of like those Nikola Jokic big man playmaking chores. So that goes as well with Jimmy Butler. So now that they're healthy, maybe that's the reason Bam Adebayo is kind of like, weren't able to really give us a lot of stats that we're expecting, especially those snipes that was really, that those were highlighted during preseason. Hey, Bam Adebayo will be shooting a lot of snipes. So, but yeah, I do agree with DMAC here. I'm expecting more for Bam Adebayo. Thing is, for some reason, Bam Adebayo was sometimes rich this season compared to last season. So I think aside from the hype during the preseason, I think it's more of like really um thinking that it's another Jimmy Butler is older this year, Kyler is older this year. We also don't trust those two guys, but like let me ask you, DMAC, given that you own Bam Adebayo, am I creating a logic on how you value Bam Adebayo that it's tied up with Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry's presence?
Yeah, I think that is the narrative around it's particularly Kyle Lowry, but I actually did draft Kyle Lowry in the same league just as a mini handcuff for Bam as well. Um, but I think they should be able to help each other. Honestly, I think people put a lot of value in Bam getting those assists, but you also look at his assist to turnover ratio. So he's trying to be a playmaker, but it's just not. Maybe it's just not in him. We've seen it for one season where he was. I think he was giving us 5+ assists per game, plus his typical output in terms of points and rebounds. But it's just the assists have disappeared, and maybe that's just not in him in this current setup with Bam. But even Tyler Hero now, he stepped up into the starting lineup. He's taking a lot of usage now as well. So maybe it's just not in Bam. But yeah, there was a lot of hype around him and shooting at least 18 shots per game. So let's see if that can continue. Like I said, he's had 2 games in the last 2 games, he's looked really solid. So let's see if that can continue trending up. But like I said, buy low, but let's do it now.
And Bum is one of those players that are kind of like rock solid in terms of playing for the whole season. He's one of those Iron Man. He only missed time because of we in the past 2 seasons he got COVID, and then well he got injured for a while, but not a big deal. But prior to that, he was actually an Iron Man. So that's one motivation of getting Bum as well.
Absolutely. And
Any
also,
other?
just one more point on Bam as well. He just gives you elite percentages for a center. So
Yeah.
you're looking to maintain those rebounds and those defensive stats, but not hurt your free throws. You're not in a punt free throw situation. Bam's a really nice fit. So let's hope that that continues trending up. But yeah, still a buy low.
Any other players that you want to mention? Might it be a buy, a sell, or a drop, or an ad?
I still think we still have a lot to see in Evan Mobley. I think there was a lot of hype around him while we were talking about the Cavs. A lot of hype around him in the preseason. He was picked in the 40s and 50s. So we've seen it in the last couple of games where he's looked like the premier big man on that Cavs roster. But I still think that you could send out a nice juicy offer for the owner of Evan Mobley, and I think you could be able to pry him off of that owner's hands. Um, so I think he's still a buy low. Um, Cat, he's probably that buy low window is probably closed now, even though his overall ranking is still relatively low. I think that's dramatically increased in the last couple of games. So that's probably something that may have been lost, and maybe he's finding that synergy and chemistry alongside Rudy Gobert. So Cat's rebounds have increased. His shooting has looked a lot better. Uh, so that's probably something that we can't now execute. So I was looking to do that if the trend continued to be able to pry Cat off of his owner's hands. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. What about yourself, Roy? Anything of note?
Russell Westbrook, bro.
Oh,
I
you have him, don't you? You've got
yeah,
him.
I have. I was about to drop him, but guess what? He actually kind of like helped me win that week because of his rebound. So, to be honest, if you can get Russell Westbrook buy very low, like for example, you pick up what whoever you pick up, like Lonnie Walker. I kind of like dig Russell Westbrook just like really try. Maybe this
Mm.
coming off the bench works. Maybe it helps his value because in fairness to Russell Westbrook, despite the negativity, despite those deficiencies, you can't really find someone in the free agent pool or as low as him and maybe Ben Simmons that can actually provide that are actually strong in several categories like rebound and then maybe scoring and then assists and steals. So if you need those stats, it depends on how you built your team. I would try to get Westbrook and because I'm pretty sure it's not only his performance but also his antics in reality that is kind of like really hurting his value, and his owner would really love to, part ways with him, but he can't, or that owner just can't really drop him. So try to, um, try to check if he's available, and then how what his valuation you can actually buy super low. That goes as well with Ben
Absolutely.
Simmons.
Yeah, yeah. I have Simmons in my locked on fantasy league, and I'm um, punting points and punting threes, and he's actually doing really well for me. He hasn't. Um, I've still been able to win free throws as well with him in my team. I have boosted that with KD next to him, so which has been nice. But he's been really valuable for myself. So yeah, I think he'll just get better and better as the season goes on. I do have a quick question for you before we leave, Roy. In nine
Go.
cat, nine cat, can you tell me in terms of ranking who is the better player, Paolo Banchero or Jabari Smith?
Hmm. In nine cat.
In nine cat, yeah. So most people will say Banchero. He's had an electric start to the
Yeah.
season, right? But if you're
Like
not punting free throws, he's doing some damage. High volume free throws. He's actually ranked lower than Jabari Smith, which is crazy to think about. Um, Obviously, those that disregard turnovers and punt that category and punt free throws, Banchero's been by far and away an outstanding player, and yeah, still favorite for rookie of the year. But it's just very interesting what nine categories can do in terms of ranking these types of players. Very, very
ex-
interesting.
exactly, and actually, I can see Jabari Parker as one of my candidate for buy lows, just because of surface checks. If you check his field goal percentage, because I was actually thinking, hey, Paulo Banquero doesn't shoot well in free throws, but Jabari Parker doesn't really give us what he promised yet of that efficiency in the field goal. So um,
Mm.
come to think of it, I was also thinking that Barry can actually be a buy low just because of that thinking that, hey, I saw Barry playing center minutes. Now Sengun is healthy. He might get dinged, right? So you can actually, tell that story to the Jabari owner and then try to get some Jabari in your team. By the way, shout out to Papi Kenji. We actually had a trade last week. He asked for my Nick Claxton, traded for his Jabari Smith. So I gladly accepted that trade. So I got Jabari now, and then I parted ways with Nick Claxton. So his reasoning is he really wanted some big man in his build. As far as I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, Papi Kenji. But on my end, I just wanted to pair a lot of Smiths in my because I have Jalen Smith. So I actually renamed my team Mr. and Mr. Smith. Now, I just think that Jabari Smith eventually gets these are rookies, guys. So I think he'll definitely get used to the defense of the NBA at some point in time. So that percentages will get smoothened. Because if you check out his stats back in college, it's actually consistent. He's actually a good shooter. So I'm hoping for that to happen. And then I believe he's actually, he has some lingering injury in his ankle, so maybe that's also is keeping him down compared to a flashy Benedict Maturin who gives you 30 points and actually, you would love to see. So Jabari Parker isn't that guy. So he's being overshadowed just because of what he brings to what he brings to the table in terms of fantasy, which is actually the reason why DMAC asked that question. Because, like what DMAC mentioned, definitely majority of the us will think that Paulo Banquero is having a has a higher value in nine cats over Jabari. Okay, any parting words, bro? I have a lot of things in mind, but I think let's reserve that next week. But you, bro, anything you want to talk about or you want to mention before we end our episode?
Yeah, I think just really excited to see where things go. I think the MVP race is really heating up. I think Luca, we spoke about it in last week's episode, but Luca's looking outstanding, but so is Yana. So it's a for me,
Yeah,
it's a clear 1-2, and I think we picked both of those guys respectively. So that's really exciting to watch. Um, Season's heating up. I think I put out a tweet the other day that Brooklyn looks like they're tanking as well for Wemby, which is interesting. But Lakers had their first win overnight, so that's always promising. It's all Russ.
yeah. By the way, everyone, so everyone that's watching, I'm currently polishing the schedule that I have. So, speaking of those Brooklyn takes and those Lakers takes, I'm planning to put or create an episode per week, wherein I invite anyone that just want to be in the show, and let's talk about something in reality, not more on leaning on fantasy. So I'm gonna call it like the reality bite episode, wherein let's talk about your Lakers team. Let's talk about your Brooklyn and how and how Nash and how Kyrie is doing right there. Have you read that dinner the dinner post wherein there was an instance wherein they're having a dinner and then Nash walked out because of what Kyrie mentioned.
No, I haven't heard that. Tell me
Yeah, so
more.
I remember I'm not sure about the exact thing that Kyrie mentioned. It's more of like they're talking about not I'm pretty sure it's a non-basketball thing, but then when Nash mentioned about utilizing something, then Kyrie uh talks and say, yeah, coming from you're telling about how to utilize stuff. So it's like instigating that Nash doesn't know how to really utilize his players. So what happened is Nash actually walks out on that dinner with Kyrie. So yeah, a lot of things happening off the court, bro. By the
Yeah,
way,
yeah, it's a bit of turmoil there, and everything going on with Kyrie as well. It's pretty crazy.
and
Not not my favorite guy.
it's something to really monitor, by the way, and on how would the Brooklyn Nets, the media, will handle Kyrie, because we are in the cancel generation, so I'm pretty sure something's gonna happen with the controversial takes of Kyrie. But yeah, let's talk about it more on a separate episode. So thank you so much, DMAX. So guys, expect this weekly review. If you love this format, just let us know. If you want to add more, let us know as well. Unfortunately, we can't read all of your comments. I'm having technical difficulties in my StreamYard account, so we'll just answer that offline, I guess, after finishing this episode. And then I'm going to, so I've been doing a lot of English content with Dima, but I'll be uploading those usual Filipino Tagalog content soon. So I've already recorded them as promised, but I wasn't able to upload them. So possibly in the upcoming days, hopefully within this week, because my takes are up to date. So if I uploaded them next week, so it won't matter anymore because there's a lot of things happening in the NBA. Anyways, again, this episode is brought to you by Secretong Palisan sa San Lorenzo Road. Uh, silver lining of the typhoon and rainy season here in the Philippines. It's we always love to spend our rainy days with soup beside us. So that's possibly the pares that you want. So if you're interested to taste our very very delicious pares, just let me know. So just come to our store in San Lorenzo Road. You'll definitely enjoy our soup there. Of course, DMAC here, he is available at Twitter mostly. If you want a great follow in Twitter, he's not me. I'm pretty sure it's not me. It's going to be DMAC here. So follow him. NBA Fantasy Bible in Twitter. From my end, we're always available at Facebook Fantasy Basketball Pinas, NBA Fantasy League PH. That's the group that we have in Facebook. YouTube and Spotify, Fantasy Basketball PH, Twitter handle, NBA Fantasy Papi, Kumu, Papi Roy. So thank you so much, everyone. Again, Let's see each other again next Monday. We're going to improve our contents more. We're just trying to wing it right now, but we're getting better. I hope we're getting better. And then I hope you enjoy our shows every week. Thank you so much, bro. Thank you so much, Dimak. Happy Halloween, bro.
Happy Halloween. Thank you, Roy. Stay safe and take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.